Hi, I'm Kačka.
I'm Nico.
This is Mufik. And we were enjoying the winter in the Middle East until the current situation in Iran started. And we had to cut the trip short. And because of that, we're now freezing in Turkey. When it started, we were in Saudi Arabia enjoying the deserts and the volcanoes. And then one night, we actually saw a rocket in the sky. It was the very first night of the conflict. It was actually pretty since we didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, it was beautiful. There's this big, bright blue light that exploded in the sky. We thought it was some kind of astronomical event.
We still felt really safe in Saudi Arabia, somewhere in the deserts.
There's a lot of wilderness out there, and most of the places that were being targeted by drones and missiles were on the east coast and major cities like Riyadh, and we were far away from there, so we weren't in danger at all. So we decided to wait a little bit and see how everything plays out.
And because we kept watching the news and the news were kind of like not saying much, it's hard to know what to trust, what not to trust. So eventually we decided to leave before either the borders start closing or before something start escalating in Iraq maybe.
Yeah, because the only way out of the Middle East is through Iraq currently, for northern Iraq, because the border between Syria and Turkey is closed for foreigners. So if there was some kind of issue, situation got worse in Iraq and it was no longer feasible for us to drive through there, we would have to either take a ferry to Africa, or take a ferry to Egypt and then take a ferry from Egypt to Italy.
Which would basically cost as much as half of a new car. So we started driving. First we had to drive through Kuwait. We were a little worried about driving through Kuwait because we were reading all the news about all the rockets going in that direction. Plus it's a small country, so it's easy to miss and hit a little Czech car.
Anyway, while we were camping, spending the night by the border, between Kuwait and Iraq, I saw either a drone or a rocket get intercepted. So I saw this bright red intercepting missile get launched into the air from a nearby base and hit some kind of target high above Kuwait.
Otherwise, we didn't see anything war related, didn't have any problems. There was also a thunderstorm at night, so we did hear a lot of noise, but it's hard to say if they were explosions or just thunders. Also, we noticed that the local police, border police or regular police, they really don't like Iraq. Once it was at the border, and second time it was in the evening when we were camping, which was kind of a weird situation overall because the car was not marked, the guys didn't have uniforms, they didn't have police IDs or anything, so it was a bit of a hassle to get any kind of ID from them. So the next morning we drove through the border. The border was also chill, but it still took a long time to cross because there's a lot of procedures. Then we spent the first night in Iraq in Babylon. We stopped for dinner in the little town, and we were chilling with locals. People were very friendly, but we did not tell them that Nico is American. I think that they would probably still be friendly, but I think it's better not to. Then we drove to a camp spot at the actual archaeological site, Babylon, and we were sleeping guarded by a SWAT team, which was pretty cool actually. They were turning all the cars around, like the area was closed, but they let us through because they are actually very worried about foreigners in their country, and they wanted to make sure that we won't have any problems at night. And we also had German neighbors, so it was actually a pretty pleasant evening.
And driving through Iraq was surprisingly seamless. We didn't run into any issues, and we drove through a number of PMF checkpoints, checkpoints that were staffed by PMF members. And the PMF is a large Iran-backed militant group in the country, and they're actually now officially part of the Iraqi military as of 2015 or something like that, because they helped the Iraqi government fight ISIS. And you'd think that you would have some kind of issues going through checkpoints that were staffed by Shiite Iranian-backed militants with an American passport.
It was actually way faster than in the fall when we were driving in the opposite direction and we were getting stopped and our car checked at every checkpoint. Now we just showed them our passport, they said hi, bye, and that was it.
So when you drive through the parts of the country where the majority of the population is Shia, you see these billboards everywhere that have the faces of prominent Shiite clerics like Ayatollah Khamenei and different Iraqi Shiite clerics, along with the faces of Hezbollah and PMF.
So you can see that some groups have been activated, but we did not encounter any problems at all. We spent our second night in Hatra, which is also an archaeological site, because we figured that these places are always guarded, so it should be a safe place to spend the night. The local police and guards did not think the same. They actually tried to make us go spend the night to Mosul, because they were saying that that area is dangerous, but in the end they let us spend the night directly at their checkpoint. So again, we had private security, we had bathroom, we had Wi-Fi, totally luxurious. And the guys were very friendly, very nice. We were talking to them even about some political topics, and they were very open. The next morning, we visited Hatra, which is a very interesting place.
It's a remarkable archaeological site that is still relatively well preserved, despite the fact that much of it was destroyed by ISIS when they occupied the region. But it's still very much worth seeing, and there are some absolutely incredible temples there that resemble ancient Greek or ancient Roman temples.
Then we continued driving north, and on the way it started raining really heavily. The deserty landscape got flooded pretty quickly, because it's just not made for that. And when we were driving through Mosul, all the roads there looked more like rivers than roads. But we were lucky because they didn't get flooded to the extent that they would need to be closed. So we made it through pretty easily. And in the evening we arrived in Duhok, which is already in Iraqi Kurdistan. And we were planning to spend like a chill night there and drive to the border in the morning, because we heard that the border can take a while, and that's always better when you're well rested than when you're tired and cranky. But our chill evening got a bit disrupted by embassy messages and calls. First, I got more of just like a checkup message from the Czech embassy in Baghdad, when they wanted to check up on me, see where I am, what my plan is, and when I'm planning to get the fuck out of there. Which is actually really nice to see that they care like this, that it works, that the embassies they actually take care of their citizens.
I got a totally unexpected call from someone at the US Embassy in Baghdad. They told me that they had received intelligence that suggested that terrorists were tracking me and that I needed to get out of the country as soon as possible. And for confidentiality reasons, they weren't able to give me any kind of additional information. And I felt like that was kind of overkill, especially because we were already in Iraqi Kurdistan, which is a very safe region. They have their own army that keeps any kind of terrorist organizations from operating in the region. But regardless, receiving calls like that kind of gets you on edge.
In the morning, we drove to the Turkish border, which was again very smooth with no problems, except for when Nico had to pay for his speeding ticket that he got back in November when we were driving south. But we crossed and we're now in Turkey. It's still winter here. Amazing. So overall, being in the Middle East right now isn't as dramatic as media make it look. Saudi Arabia is totally safe right now, especially the deserts.
Up until I got that call, I felt totally safe in Iraq.
Even driving through Iraq was really not as bad. We still had very friendly encounters with locals. We didn't have any problems even at the PMF checkpoints. But I do admit that it was not the smartest decision that we ever made. And better safe than sorry. So we're now safe in Turkey.